Okay, so recording started. Hey Gabriel, how's it going today?
Hi, hello, Jack. It's all right. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, it's a huge honor. I basically started this year with my VFX career, and currently I'm working on a project, a very exciting one. And I learned from your videos, and I think in this podcast my goal is to ask you about your story, because I think in your videos, you're very focused on how to make certain effects, and
Yeah.
that's great. But I would really like to know who Gabriel is and what brought you to here.
Oh, yeah. Sure. Well, yeah. It's actually a pretty interesting story. I was working already in the industry, and I was still finishing my bachelor's degree. And eventually, I was contacted by a friend, and he was like, "Yeah, we are doing a game, and it would be awesome if you could work with us." And I was like, "Yeah, sure. That's the dream." So I jumped right into the job, did the stuff they asked me about, and all we did a lot of how do you say, a lot of generalist line.
Exactly.
Like
Yeah.
in this case, yeah. So yeah, it was a great job. What I'm trying to say, it was a great job. But eventually, I reached that point where I was like, yeah, I don't want to do this. I don't know. I wasn't feeling very happy on that place. It was cool in the beginning, but I eventually decided to quit that job. And at the same time, I quit the job. I eventually created this channel, Gabriel Aguiar. And it's funny because I never thought about it as my main thing.
Mm.
And eventually it turned out to be my main thing. And the channel at the beginning was only tutorials about Photoshop and Blender, and it was not even visual effects. But eventually I realized if visual effects is pretty cool, what if I do a video about it?
Mm.
What if I try explaining how this is done in a simpler way, in an easier way?
Mm.
And eventually I did my first video on visual effects, and the first one that I did, it's funny because the first one I did just came out really great, and today it has close to 4,000 views,
Mm.
400,000 views.
Oh wow.
And yeah, and I never thought that was going to be a hit. So that was really the beginning, and that's when I realized, yeah, I'm going to do only visual effects. I'm going to leave Photoshop behind and Blender tutorials behind, and it's all about VFX. What if I do a channel only about VFX? And yeah, that's how it started actually. Yeah, that's
So there's a lot to uncover here. One of the main questions is like, I didn't know that you started with Photoshop, because that's a bit closer
yeah.
to my background. So I wanted to
Oh,
ask you about when did you get into coding? Is that something you studied?
yeah. I was doing my bachelor's degree, and the bachelor's degree was about game design. It was very,
Oh.
very general. Yeah, it was extremely general. And my background was actually interior design,
Mm.
architecture, and stuff like that. So I was okay with the artistic side of things, but the programming part was never my strong.
Mm.
And on that course, it was not the focus programming. So what me and a friend did back then was to enlist on another class from another course. We were doing the main course, the game design course, but we decided, what if we enlist ourselves on the class about programming, C sharp,
Yeah. Okay.
because we realized that that was something that was lacking in our course.
Mm.
And we had a great teacher back there, and that's where it clicked. That's where stuff clicked. And but that was just the beginning. Eventually, we need to do a lot of personally, I do a lot of trial and error. That's how I learn, and that's how I eventually was okay, feeling okay with programming. Yeah.
So you come like from an artistic background, had to learn coding from scratch. Do you feel like until this day you don't quite get a lot of the coding side of things? Do you feel like when you implement your work, your VFX work, uh, do you feel like you can go beyond that and like make a game? Do you feel comfortable? How do you have a conversation with a programmer, let's say?
Okay, so that's a great question, because you see, I eventually built a game design company. We have a game development company,
Oh.
Golden Bug Studios. Yeah, and back in 2021, I founded Golden Bug Studios, and we are developing Rabbit still. And I did a prototype. I prototyped the game, and eventually I hired a programmer, professional programmer,
Yeah.
someone really, really good with that stuff. And so it was actually pretty easy for me to eventually do the transition from the artistic brain to the programming side of things, because I really enjoyed it. Now I applied myself, and I learned how to code. But to me, it was based on a lot of tutorials, definitely a lot of tutorials, learning and googling a lot of stuff. Back then we didn't have AI, we couldn't ask anything. We had to Google a lot of stuff, and figure out from there. And today that was super useful back then when I founded Golden Bug Studios, because with the programmer that I hired, it was an easy conversation with him. I could go back and forth and exchange ideas, and he would implement exactly how we needed. And yeah, actually, he was actually a very easy person to work with. He eventually left the company, and is now doing something else, but that's an entire different
So you're like
conversation.
you own a lot of businesses, right? You have the
Yeah,
the channel, which has its own income through like the asset store and the videos, of course, and then you also have a video game company, a studio.
yeah, actually, the main focus was always to develop games. My main focus was always to develop games.
It's awesome.
But yeah, it wasn't always possible, because it's not life sometimes takes you to different paths.
Yeah.
But yeah, but that I try to basically, life is not a straight path, and I went really around and around to eventually get here to the point where, yeah, cool. Now I have my dream company, where I have Golden Bug, and we have great artists, we have great programmer, really great people working here.
How many
And
people are you
well,
at
now
Golden Bug?
let's see. Yeah, let's see. Now we are between 7 and 10, more or less 7 and 10. Yeah,
That's a decent sized
it,
team. That
yeah,
you know.
it's to begin with. It's decent. It's decent. The thing that stresses me the most is managing everything, because there's the
Oh
channel,
yeah.
like you were saying. There's the game company. There's the supporting customers. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
you run everything through the same studio basically, even
yeah,
the asset store
exactly.
and everything.
Exactly. We have a team here focused on visual effects. It's
Oh.
me. It's another Gabriel. It's,
Your
yeah,
clone.
it's yeah,
I
yeah.
love
It's
that.
pretty funny. And then now, recently, like 2 weeks ago, we have now a new intern, which is Pedro, and he's doing some very interesting stuff that I'm really eager to show, because his main focus is realistic effects. We
Oh,
don't have that much stuff. Yeah, on the asset store or on my channel, we don't have that much stuff on realistic side of things.
that is true. Yeah. Oh, I'm excited to see Pedro's stuff. That sounds
Yeah,
like a cool content to watch. So
yeah,
interns, right? Interns take a lot of the work, right?
yeah. Some of the work. Yeah, eventually, there's a process where they begin something, and then it goes through me, and then it goes to the public.
But
That's
how
usually
do you feel
how.
like in comparison to when you started, how do you feel about the new generation? Like when you have an intern, do you feel like they have a broad knowledge about things, like different engines? I think like back when you started, you had to like almost make your own tutorials, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much. Yeah, yeah. There were very few channels that talked about game effect.
Mm.
There was a huge mystery. What is real-time effect?
Yeah.
And yeah, I feel like nowadays they are really well prepared, and there's a lot of options online, and they can go and learn stuff on their own very easily, almost
Almost
in
for
a much
free.
more comfortable way. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Like your content is like, even if you don't have any idea about visual effects, if you just watch like a simple tutorial of yours, like the trail tutorial,
Yeah,
or a simple explosion or a sparks tutorial, you kind of get it, because the way you make your videos, you kind of bring in all the different what are they called, disciplinary, in one video,
yeah.
and you do it every video. Like there's no exceptions. I've never watched a video from you where you don't at least describe something from the beginning, but you don't go too much into details that it gets boring. Like what I like about your YouTube videos is that if I watch any of them, they're not a series, right? You do your best to
Yeah.
describe every step of the way. What brought this formula? How did you come up with that? Because you have like amazing communication skills.
Thanks, man. Thanks. Yeah, on the beginning, at the beginning, I was always focused on. I want to make a video that stands on its own and doesn't need other videos so people.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, most of the times, if you have a part one and then a part two and then a part three, the part two and the part three are not as much. They are not viewed as much. So I always wanted to focus on having a video that could stand on its own, and I would try to give people a general idea on a lot of topics and a lot of things that goes into making visual effects in that single video. Some videos are a little bit more straightforward. Other videos, sometimes I try to explain a bit more what's going on behind. But it's hard. It's an art process to have a nice balance between keeping it simple, keeping it interesting, and not too boring, too detailed. Because it's easy to get lost on explanations and on details. We could talk about just how to make one effect, or way longer than most of the videos.
Yeah, I mean, I also like how you go over complex topics like coding, for example. You don't explain too much about coding, and the way you go over
Yeah,
it is like you either know coding or you just don't, right? And
exactly.
you kind of
Yeah.
give the idea of like, hey, you can copy this if you want to, right? You don't even like care to explain, and I like that because like I don't want to be intimidated by the code if
Yes.
I can't code. And if I can code, I can easily follow your video and be like, oh, that's an interesting way to do it, right?
Yes, that's exactly the idea. That's you put it very well. That's the idea that if you know how to code, you get an idea of how I did, and you can replicate, and that's all right. But if you don't know how to code, and if you don't want to get bothered with that, then sure, it's fine. You can just copy paste code if you want, and
Yeah.
simply focus on the effect
I wanted
side of
I
things.
wanted to ask you eventually, like, how do you feel about the fact that you're inspiring hundreds of thousands of new game dev people or VFX people to go into the industry? How does that feel to you? Like, you must feel really
Yeah,
good.
I actually I don't think much about it, to be honest. It's like that's what I do, you know.
Mm.
And I always wanted to give people the ability to create effects on their own and learn on their own. But I never think about it on that way. Like, yeah, I'm helping a lot of people and a lot of
Mm.
game developers doing their own thing, and it's great. That really makes me happy. Sometimes I receive comments and emails, people thanking me, and it's nice. It's really nice. It gets me up, gets me through the day.
Yeah.
Every time I receive a positive message, it's like, yeah, okay, I'm
Yeah,
doing
that's
something
like what I
good.
wanted to ask you about. It's like it
Yeah,
must feel really good to like
yeah,
look
it
in the
feels
comments and like,
positive. Yeah,
yeah.
it's really okay. I'm doing something nice for the world, for the indie dev community. It's okay. I'm happy with that. It's all right. Cool.
And it's also generating income in the end, you know?
Yeah, in the end, it does. Not directly through YouTube because YouTube doesn't generate that much income,
Yeah.
but
Through the
yeah, it
courses you offer, like the Udemy
yeah,
courses
exactly.
you offer. And that's something I really enjoyed about the content when I first started. And I didn't start that long ago, like maybe June last year. So when I started
Okay.
streaming, and I like the first thing I started with is your course. The explosion one, I think, the stylized explosion. Or nah, the other one where you just explain everything from the beginning, the
Oh yeah,
beginner
yeah,
to
the beginner
intermediate.
friendly. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I
and
wish I
yeah.
could update that one.
Why? Is there a lot of old stuff in it, or?
Yeah, it's from 2019, I believe, and
Mm,
there's all, I receive a lot of comments of people asking me, why don't you update this course? Well, it's not that easy. Updating a
yeah.
course, it's almost like making one from scratch.
You have to, right? There's no easy way. I wish there was a platform where you could just update things on the go. They are
Yeah,
like it's also, does the business model help you with making that? Like, is it a subscription based? If yes, then you can excuse the time that you're putting
yeah.
into that, right?
Yes, it's actually I haven't been doing much courses now recently because they take a
Hmm.
huge amount of time. And they are fun. I love doing courses. It's actually one of
Cool.
the things that I want to get back to doing.
Hmm.
But now with a game development company and stuff like that, and managing all the people,
Yeah.
I still have to find a way, a formula, somehow to make courses
Hmm.
and how do I put it? Not lose too much time from managing the game developing company, from managing golden bugs. So I
Yeah.
think I have a plan, and I want to try it with the interns. I want to try because you see everything that is video editing, it's
Hmm.
all me, and that part, and even the tutorial part, that's my job. I do it from scratch, but having the other people do that, it's very hard. Having another artist do I don't know. Let me say, I don't know. Having another artist recording a tutorial for me and me
Hmm.
voicing it over. That's a process that I still have to
Oh, that's a
improve.
tough
Do you
one
see
to
what
plan,
I'm
and
trying to? Yeah.
it's a tough one to manage and a tough one to edit. It's
Yes.
almost three times the work if you think about it.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah, I still have to find a way to have convenient workflow between me and the team, so we can produce videos and produce courses in a timely manner, basically.
What could be interesting, and I'm an idea guy. Like I just have ideas.
Sure.
You
Yeah.
have to shut me up for me not to have ideas anymore. So one idea could be is to make like a almost like an event type of let's say 4 weeks to the YouTube followers that buy the course between, let's say, March and April. You give them
Hmm.
4 weeks call where you give feedback to them, and you
Yeah.
edit those and you put it on your channel, and you kind of just describe like what is the common issues people go through, what are yeah, I think it could make a nice content, you know.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know, it's just an idea.
No, that's an interesting idea because I could get content and still help people,
Yeah,
and yeah, that's an interesting idea. I got it.
they can even pay for entry basically.
Yeah. yeah, like basically a mentorship and a review of your portfolio or your effects. And yeah, I see where you're going. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
an interesting idea. Yeah,
kind of like an indirect mentorship in a way.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
like
More like
if you have a really good intern who can really make really good effects, you can assign them to give feedback on the Discord, for example, like a daily feedback, not a call, but like written feedback. And then you have like one call a week for 4 weeks, like a boot camp, where you just tell them, hi, I've seen your work, and you go just through them and you give them pointers, and it's like maximum
yeah,
1 hour and a half or whatever a week, and then you make content out of this whole experience, and you can even sell it as a package. But that's just an idea.
yeah. No, it's an interesting idea. Definitely, we'll think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah, game dev, VFX, they kind of come hand in hand, right? A lot of times.
yeah.
A lot of games would not make any sense without the visual effects.
True,
So
true
what is
story.
your relationship with that part of it?
Well, it's funny because I've been developing Rabbit's Tail for almost 4 or 5 years, and it's a Metroidvania. And actually, I've been doing the part of visual effects now. It has
Ah,
reached the point. It has reached that very nice
yes.
moment of doing visual effects. And I've
Nice.
been doing a ton of visual effects because
Yeah.
it has quite a few abilities. It's a rabbit's tail. It's a rabbit, and you can equip amulets, and those amulets alterate the way he works, basically.
Mm.
And I've been doing a lot of visual effects, and I have always to focus on two things first, which is uh, the the mechanic,
Mm.
how the game mechanic in itself. What does this ability do? What's the objective of the ability itself in
Mm.
the amulet and stuff like that? And then try to implement it in a way that doesn't occupy the whole screen, because there's always
Mm.
that will to do something beautiful and impactful and stuff like that. And sometimes we have to bring it down a little bit, and
Scale it down.
yeah, don't
Yeah.
go too far.
Yeah.
And yeah, it has been an interesting process because it has been everything frame by frame and made frame by
Oh,
frame,
okay.
and yeah, it brings a flavor, a different flavor to the effects.
Wow.
Something that I have to talk a little bit more on my YouTube channel too. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited to know more about the game. But speaking like, do you use your Which engine are you using now? Is it Unity? I guess because you're trained on C#, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. It's
So,
Unity.
are you
Yeah.
using the visual effect graph for that?
No, no, no,
Yeah. Okay.
no. Yeah. It's only
What's the
the
reason?
yeah, the visual effect graph. It's an awesome tool and very flexible, extremely flexible, but
Mm.
it's still not yet supported on all the platforms.
Oh yeah,
And yeah, and the game we are creating, Rabbit's Tail, we planned from the beginning that it should work on
mobile.
yeah,
Yeah.
not on mobile, eventually on mobile
Mm.
down the road, but at the beginning on Switch and
On the
Nintendo
Switch.
Switch and
Yeah.
on these more lightweight platforms. And I feel like VFX Graph will bring a few problems down the road, so
Mm-hmm.
that's why I went with particle system,
Yeah.
because yeah, I would use visual effect graph if it was, for example, something realist like a first-person shooter or something like that that requires,
Yeah.
or an RPG that requires advanced systems like falling leaves and then they need to interact with the player. I don't know, stuff like that,
Yeah,
more
something
advanced.
that requires like a lot of particles, which means like it's gonna require the GPU for it, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I'm mainly just working with the VFX graph right now where I'm working. It's funny, you're working with frame by frame,
Yeah,
and I'm, our art director is like
yeah,
more
it's funny.
focused on meshes and 3D. So I'm literally creating effects that probably never got created before. It's always like interesting solutions, right? I really can't wait to show the game because the effects in it, they're very different to what you're usually like used to in games. So I'm excited to show you too some of the effects I'm working with. Like one of the things I'm doing,
I'm curious,
is doing like frame by frame mesh effect.
Oh wow!
With Boolean and like this much of amount of like, so one of my graphs are, I think you need like 2 4K screens to just see it.
That's huge.
It's big. Whoa. And it all started with like me understanding visual graph. It all started with me watching your tutorials. So I find it funny when I compare where I started, and it's not that long ago, to my current understanding of the system. I'm like, I laugh about it, you know? Because like in your videos, you start with very basic things, like let's make a Spark system, and it's like, you know, it's a couple of components and a couple of blocks. And right now I'm doing those spider nets.
It's huge thing. Oh, spider nets. Oh, that sounds interesting. Those are huge effects. They're complex ones.
They're really complex, but I feel like they can be way more efficient. But you know how it is when you're just like copying and pasting and just connecting fast to see if it's gonna work, and then you promise to clean it up, but you never clean it up.
I know what it is. Organization is a key element sometimes when developing.
Yeah, your assets are great. You organize them very like.
Thank you.
Like in such a cool way. Like you could study your assets. If anyone is buying Gabriel's assets, like just check the visual effects graph or the shader graph that he does. Do you do that on purpose, by the way, so people like can learn from it as well?
Yes, it's one of the how do I put it? One of the objectives when publishing an asset, that it's flexible, customizable, and people can understand it easily. Wow. And if they want to learn from it, sure, go ahead. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing, man. You're doing so much cool stuff for the VFX, for the games industry at least. Like the thing is, like when you want to learn visual effects, it's always like attached to films, you know.
Yeah.
And you don't find many. Like, let's take the visual effects graph for example. You're basically the only person that makes content about it, right?
Yeah,
like video content.
It's funny. It's funny because there should be a few more people doing that content, but and I wish I could have more time to do more content about it and go deeper.
Yeah.
Because VFX graph, we are only scratching the surface.
That's what I wanted to say. Yeah.
It's amazing. It's such a powerful tool.
It's so cool when you figure out stuff like using math, for example, or like using switches or the noise. I don't know if you watched. Unity made a video about the visual effects graph.
Yes,
do you know it? The Let's Dev video. I think it's called.
They have that awesome demo, that awesome package with a lot of visual effect graphs. I don't know if you saw it.
I saw it.
The same thing.
It's the same thing, and everything is available for free. But like that video maybe has, I don't know, maybe 2,000 views or something.
I don't know. Yeah, it doesn't. It's that. Yeah.
It doesn't have the closure. Like a lot of people need to know about like what Unity did for you to play around with those effects, and they actually explain it. So.
Very well. Yeah.
Very well. So at one point when I got the job, I was like, okay, I have like a week to learn more about the graph because we will use it heavily. So I went into the documentation of Unity and went page by page. And what I did is I copied the text, put it in ChatGPT, and told it to explain it to me like I'm 5-year-old. Right? I didn't get to know all the aspects of it, but I had a basic idea about some functionality that I never touched before. So I was able to Google them very quickly. When I've done that, I immediately went to this video. It's called Let's Dev. It's about the visual effects graph. It's from Unity itself. And they literally go over what I've been putting on ChatGPT, like what I've been trying to understand about the visual effect graph. They went over it in a video. And you're like, oh, I should have just watched that video.
It clicks. it's a complex tool. It's not an easy tool to get our heads to wrap our head around it. But once you start figuring out how to connect stuff, you can do awesome stuff.
It's not
And
that much different from the shader graph if you think about it, right?
yes, yes, there's a correlation between the both, and I think if people know one, they can easily learn the other. Just
Mm,
like if they know the particle system, the OG particle system,
mm.
at least they can have a basic idea of how VFX graph eventually works. It's just a different workflow.
You know, I was surprised that not a lot of people are covering it. So I had the first thought. The first thought came in my mind. I'm like, is visual effect graph a copycat, so to speak, to Niagara system? And I haven't touched that, so I wanted to ask
That's a
you
great
about that.
question. That's a great question because you see, I've been playing with both a lot,
Mm,
because people that work here that I work with, Gabriel and Pedro, they are doing work with VFX Graph and Niagara. They are
mm,
actually both working with Niagara now,
yeah,
and there's they have a lot of doubts,
yeah.
and I have to always keep up with them and always to touch Niagara. And I keep thinking the same thing, but I don't know which one came first. Probably Niagara came first,
Yeah,
probably. But
probably.
in the end, they are extremely similar. They are
Mm.
extremely similar. They have that bound particle, then they have the initialized particle,
Oh, here
then
you
update
go.
particle, and
Yeah.
render.
Then it makes sense that you could follow an Niagara tutorial at the same time. I think they made VFX Graph. I think, and this is just my theory. I think Unity made VFX Graph, so if an Unreal VFX artist comes to play around with Unity, they kind of have the same tools, right? It kind of feel the same
Perhaps,
to me.
yeah. Mhm.
So kind of like if you wanna, it in a funny way, if you wanna expand more on the visual effect graph, you kind of need to learn Niagara in a way.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
see where you're going. Yeah, yeah. I personally still find, but this is just a personal
Yeah.
taste, Unity VFX Graph easier
Mm.
because, and they are similar, but there's a moment where they follow different paths.
Oh, okay.
When the logic nodes, because in both you can have logic nodes and you can have those extra nodes besides the main column, right?
Yes.
You can have those exactly.
Yeah.
They have a specific name for that, but I don't recall it right now.
Mm.
But on Unreal, it's different the way they do it.
Okay.
The way they did it, it's not on the same area you are working. You open up a new node,
Oh.
a new stuff, and you work in there,
Okay.
and then you come back to the main thing.
Ooh. Ugh,
Yeah,
that's
while
difficult.
on it's a little bit. I don't. It's all right, but on Unity, at least everything is on the same thing. You
Yeah.
can also create those subgraphs, which is awesome
Yes.
if you want to create those subgraphs. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. But if you want, you can keep everything on the same page and everything is there. You see a bunch of lines. It's all right, but it's up to you.
That's kind of cool. I didn't know about that, about the Niagara system and how it works, but I kind of prefer, like, the way you're describing it. I'm leaning no more towards the VFX graph. Like you said, if you wanna organize it, you create a subgraph,
Yeah,
and you
sure.
don't have to worry about it anymore. It kind of helps to always have the overview of the logic, especially if the logic. Like, I would rather have that always there, because I won't, if I want to reference a graph to another graph that I'm doing and I want to go back and see, like, oh, what did I
Exactly.
do there differently? I see it immediately. Like, even with the way you work sometimes, like, each one has their own personal style. The way I
Yes.
organize multiple multiplications is different to how I organize addition or division or whatever. So I have, like, a way to visually distinguish between, like, you kind of just develop your own
Yes.
thing
Yes.
by time. I'm sure
I
you have
see. I
your
see.
own tricks too.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with you because that's the key word you said visually. We get used to a certain way of doing our stuff, and when that visual part is taken out of the equation, it's different. It's different. But if one day you will try, I'm sure you will try Niagara one
Mm.
day, and you will see that there's differences when it comes to Niagara and VFX graph. And I have already fought quite a few times in doing Niagara versus VFX graph video,
Yeah.
and I have a few notes on things that they are different. And in the end, I think Unity VFX graph is easier and can be much more flexible.
And it's
Yeah.
kind of sad in a way that it's not completely discovered, like
Yes.
in a way,
Yeah.
like you kind of need to be a computer scientist to know what you're doing.
Pretty much. Yeah. Because there's very complex stuff going on both in Niagara and VFX Ref. And yeah,
Yeah, but
it's not.
I feel like I can easily find a Niagara tutorial, right?
Yeah,
In a
exactly. And
way.
VFX Ref, for some reason, it's falling behind, but it shouldn't, because it's pretty much the same, if not even better
I would love it if
Niagara.
there was like one video that describes not just like one method how to do a certain effect, but one video that describes each node and what it does, you know,
Oh, I
and what
see.
are
Yeah,
the possibilities. Like possibilities are endless, right? Like no doubt about
pretty
that.
much. Yeah.
But at least like I would like a video that is like 4 hours long, right? Where it just the person
Yeah,
just going through each node and saying, and here's an example on how that works.
yes. Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, basically like a Bible of
Yes,
VFX graph. Yeah, that would be awesome.
I,
That would
I'm
be
sure
awesome.
there's one about the shader graph.
Yeah, I
There
think
must
there
be already
is. Yeah.
one. Yeah.
And I know who did it, but I don't recall his name, sadly. I'm not good with that, but it's from Lin. It's not Lin. He has a name that I cannot easily pronounce.
I know there was a guy who made one about
But
Godot,
yeah,
like each and every node.
Godot.
Yeah, Godot is fun, right? But it's still
Yeah, yeah.
lacking behind. Like it doesn't have a visual
It's
effect
fun.
graph
It's fun.
or
Yeah. No, it doesn't. It's that's a great topic, because I have been doing some tutorials with Godot,
yeah.
just to get some Godot developers to also discover the channel and stuff like that.
Mm.
And it's fun to see how they how they solve the same problems that Unreal and Unity have. It's fun to see that. Yeah,
Do you
but it's
feel
still.
do you feel like they
Yeah.
have to do more tricks to get the same results in Godot?
Yes.
Oh, I
Yes.
see. I see.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes, yeah. And the particle system. Look, I don't. I love all the engines, and
Yeah.
there's sometimes some beefs between Godot and Unity, and
Mm.
developers get really. This is I don't know, Godot for the win. Oh no, I'm
Yeah.
Unity for But the particle system in Godot it's very strange.
Mm.
It's very, yeah, it's too limited. It's still in its early
See.
phases, or I know, and it's not. There's something that really stresses me out when I'm using Godot, because it's not organized in a
Mm.
very friendly way.
Like
Not
a
at all.
user experience wise, you can't.
Exactly.
Like every time you need to
It's
start an effect, you have to click 3 to 4 things to just get
exactly.
started, right?
It's weird. It's weird. It's too much. For example, I have a video. I've begun a new series on my channel. I've only made 2 videos about it, which is 10 effects, 10 minutes,
Okay,
easy.
yeah, cool.
And
Yeah, I love that one.
yeah, yeah. And I wanted to do the same in Godot,
Oh,
but no,
maybe 50
it's
minutes.
maybe, yeah, because for some reason, perhaps I'm still not very fluent with it, and perhaps I'm still lacking a bit more experience. But I feel like I'm always searching stuff where it's not super compact. It's very strange.
I wanted to ask you, like, it's a different topic, but it just came to me. I don't know if it's just me, but I have the feeling that visual effects artists in the games industry don't have as much like opportunity to collaborate with each other. or to go an event with each other. Like you have, game dev people, they have events, they have
Yes.
jam, game jam. Um, we are kind of generalists. We know a couple of this disciplinary, and this is how we can put it together. But I don't feel like we have that. I don't know what it is. What is lacking? And you can maybe explain this better than me. Like, what is lacking to keep us away from like going to an event just about VFX for games and just have
Yeah,
like talks? Like,
that would be so
what is
cool.
lacking?
Probably what's lacking is just like it did lack when game development began.
Mm.
There's probably not that many people. There's a lot of people, definitely. There's a lot of
Yeah.
people doing visual effects,
Yeah.
but there's not enough people to do eventually something as big as an event only about visual effects. I think in GDC they gather a couple of VFX artists and they do like they sit in a table
Mm.
and they talk about the tools and how now the industry is advancing. And I don't know what they talk about specifically because I never went there. But I think in GDC there's something where VFX artists gather.
Mm.
But what I totally agree with you is that, and I've thought about this quite a few times, is events for VFX artists,
Mm.
more competition, more contests. I mean contests. I
Mm.
meant contests
Yeah.
for VFX artists. Like, imagine if there was a contest where you have like, I don't know. It would be awesome to have a contest like I don't know if you see that show where they have a forge and people go there and they make knives in like 2 or 3 days. They
Yeah.
have to make a specific weapon or a knife or
Yeah.
stuff like that, and that would be awesome to see that in VFX, visual effects, where you have like people gather or physically or digitally, probably digitally because it's easier online,
Mm.
and they gather and they have like 4 hours. This is the topic. You have to do this effect and like a contest, like a challenge,
Like a
and
jam.
then you have like a
VFX
jam.
jam.
Yeah, effects jam.
I think
Basically,
your channel is such a like you have such a huge reach, and you're I think the most likely to organize something like that, if I'm honest.
yeah, I thought about it a couple of times. Yeah,
What
because
happened?
that would be awesome. Game development, Golden
Life.
Bug Studios, life. Yeah, there's so much stuff that I wish I could do, and
Mm.
probably I would do someday. But at the moment, we are really focusing all of our energy on Rabbit's Tail
Of course. Of course.
and assets.
But
Yeah,
yeah, I do feel like that is needed. That is lacking in our industry. Like if you think
indeed.
about games, each game almost must have some type of a visual effect in it. Like it's as important as code or game design, but I don't feel like we get to like talk about it as much or like expand it or put it more into the front of like something to show. Like game jams
Yeah,
is something you can show, right?
yeah. You can show and people can play, and yeah, there should be a little bit more recognition because if you look at games, if they don't have visual effects, probably 90% of the games, if they don't have visual effects, they will not feel the same.
Yeah.
They will definitely not feel that fun and that punchy and stuff like
Yeah.
that. I'm
It's
not I'm not putting anything above. All the areas are extremely important,
yeah, of course.
programming
Yeah.
but there's that final touch that where the VFX artist comes and just make things click. And I feel that a lot, especially now that developing Rabbit's Tail, a game that we made from scratch. And there was a lot of prototyping stuff that until to this day they were on prototyping mode. And I reached that phase where I'm gonna do visual effects, and coming out of that prototyping phase and polishing stuff, it's so satisfying with visual
Mm.
effects that it really makes things totally worth it.
Yeah,
And
that's why a lot of people do crunching, right? Because that lasts that last 2 months of polishing the game is the most satisfying. So it's almost like
crucial.
worth a crunch because you get to see how the game is supposed to look like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You are getting you are beginning to see that light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah, it really makes you. Oh, I gotta finish this. This is awesome.
I'm definitely right now in the crunching period, and it's
Oof.
really stressful.
Yeah, I
But
bet.
every time you finish an effect, you implement it, you're like, yep, I spend like 2 hours on this, but hey, at least I get to see it.
Worth
But
it. Yeah.
yeah, but there's a lot of like stuff that you need to put in the game, and it's stressful that you feel like you're never gonna get there. So what is the strategy you suggest, like through your experience, to visual effects artists who created the effects already and need to implement it? What do you suggest, like a strategy to implement as much as possible, for example, and polish later? Or what is it in your experience?
I really like personally to begin the process with trying a lot of stuff. I did exactly the same thing here on Rabbit's Tail, where I was trying to find the art style, just the art style that
Yeah.
would fit better, because sometimes it's not obvious. Obviously, if you are developing effects for Doom or something like that,
Yeah.
you know what the art style is. It's realistic. It's blood. It's awesome. But first, I began with that, trying to find the art style, because there's tons of way of doing the same effect. There's
Yeah.
not tons of way, but there's quite a few way of doing the same thing. And finding that process is where I began. Finding that art style is
Art
where I
style.
began.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answered your question.
So basically, you are answering part of it, but I wanted to ask, like, so you start a game, right? You know, you have a kind of a way or a kind of a plan of how many VFX you might need, which might change because the game is constantly changing, right? Every month the game is changing, the game document is changing, the behaviors are changing, the actions are changing, and then, you know, sometimes you made the effect and it's done, but then you see it in the game and it's not really doing what you want, but you still created that like visual effects graph or that shuriken system that you could change a couple of parameters in and create a different effect. My question is, like, what do you start with first? So you said with you need to establish an art direction, and I 100% agree. You need to know where you're drawing the limits, and you need to do that also with the time constraint in mind. So if your game is only getting to be developed for 2 years, then you have to have that in mind. Or for 2 months, then you need to cut a lot of shit out, right?
Yeah.
So my question is, like, okay, you established the art direction. Then what's your immediate next step? Do you go through the VFX list, for example, that you made for yourself, and categorize the effects through systems? So for example, like you have a spark system. You need a spark system for that. And there's like 70 variations of sparks, right? There's the yellow one, the green one, the one with 20 particles, the one with 100 particles, the one with 1,000 particles, the one that moves in a certain way, the one with a different mesh, the one with a different, etc., etc. So do you categorize them with systems, or how do you approach your work?
Well, in that case, what I like to do is first do the list. Definitely do the list. Trying to list everything to see what you will need, and then trying to create smaller lists for basically creating categories, right? And seeing if it's possible to reuse some of that stuff that you made.
Yeah.
Because that's going to save you a lot of time. And I can't say this word, but
reusability.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's key. It's key because you will make sure that the effect is flexible enough to create variations and look different, and you will not lose too much time, because eventually, like you were saying, things change throughout the process of development, and you need to go and make those effects, especially with VFX Graph. With VFX Graph, you can easily do that. It's so easy to do that. You can create systems that are complex but flexible in a way that you can create variations that are different enough and can adjust to adapt themselves to different situations.
Absolutely.
VFX Graph is super powerful in that case. But if you don't have the luxury of using VFX Graph, you will have to find systems, for example, in my case now that I have recently in my mind is I create a lot of flip books. I have a lot
Flipbooks,
of
yeah.
flip books.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I try to see if they could be applied in different way. For
Okay.
example, I have a flip book that I made for a little guy that was rushing, and he had some flames in the front.
Yeah.
He was rushing, and that same flip book, I eventually realized that I could also use it as a shield
Oh,
with
yeah.
a twist and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So in my case, that was super useful. But sometimes we develop things that eventually go to the garbage bin. We develop stuff. It's sad
Yeah.
to see sometimes effects that we do, and they are eventually not used. And
But you have to do it. You have to do it and not look back. Like I've
it's
done it a
part
couple
of
of
the
times in the
process.
project I'm working with right now, and it's like it's just not working. Just kill it,
Yeah,
and move on.
it's
Start
sad.
from
It's sad.
scratch. Yeah.
Yeah, it's personally for us as artists, it's a little bit frustrating because we put a lot of time into that,
Yeah.
and it's
Of
not
ourselves
it's not
too. Yeah.
yeah. It's
Sometimes it's
simply
the identity in the work that is the problem.
yeah, exactly. We have to leave our mark in each stuff, and we do, and sometimes that
Which is hard in a
doesn't.
team, if you're working in a team, you're developing a game that is not your game, then it's basically in the name already. You're not doing this for your artistic satisfaction. That's my main issue with how the industry is structured in a bit. Like your first step is to get good in a skill. Then your next step is to make a portfolio that showcase that skill. Right?
Exactly.
And it's like, okay, in your portfolio, the main thing is to showcase that you can solve problems. That's the most important thing, right?
That's super important, yeah.
But the problem is, let's say it's an environment art. I could have spent on my personal project 6 months on one chair, right? The hiring person is looking at my portfolio, is like, oh my god, amazing work, we need that guy, right? So they hire me.
Yeah.
But they have no idea that I spent 7 months on one chair. That's why it looks great. And then they put you in this pipeline, and everything you do, you don't own. Why? Because you have an art director, usually above you, who's telling you, this is the style we want. It's not your style. So you have to work your skills or your skill set to match that style. Then there's the block out of the chair that comes from another person. You know what I mean? Like nothing you own.
That concept, yeah.
And then,
I feel it.
My problem with that is it's expected of you to have a really good portfolio that doesn't matter how much you spend on, how much time you spend on it. But then you're put into this completely different environment. So what are your thoughts on that?
Adapt. We have to adapt a lot, and it's a pain in the ass because we can't do what we really love sometimes in our own style. In a way, it's important to get out of our comfort zone.
Yep.
And do it. For example, in case of Rabbit's Tale, I did exactly that. My comfort zone is not doing flip books. It's not doing hand by hand. Now, maybe after 6 months, probably it is, but it wasn't. And I got out of my comfort zone, and I did that. And sometimes we have to adapt. Even in my own game, I had to follow an art style that is not my main thing.
Yeah.
But that's life, I guess, because we can't control everything. But one thing that I really like about visual effects artists is that people don't realize that when they are from other areas, from other sectors of game development, VFX artists have to, besides adapting themselves to different art styles, which is hard, it's extremely hard. Besides that, they have to be comfortable with the tool itself, which sometimes it's not as straightforward as opening Unity. Sometimes there's custom engines, and you have to learn that whole thing
Yep.
in days, not in, and VFX artists have those two things to worry, knowing all the art styles almost, and adapting to the tools.
Yep, adapting to the tools is a big one. It's also the way you adapt to the tools. Like, for example, right now I'm working with a custom-made implementation system. And it's my
Okay.
second week of trying to understand it. Because I don't
Yeah,
come from a
exactly.
coding background. Like, I really need to understand what it does. What are the possibilities? You know, this stresses me because I need to know, like, what I can do. How can I improve it? How
Yeah.
can I get faster with this? And like you said, you have days to pick it up, and no one is going to help you. I just want to go
No.
back a little bit to the point of the portfolio and the adapt argument that you gave.
Sure.
I agree and I disagree. I think I agree to the current setup that we have.
Yeah.
Like, you have your
I know what
portfolio.
you mean.
Exactly. But I disagree with like how you should be prepared for a job. I like about your videos, like you have this 10 effects in 10-minute video, right? I feel like we as artists need to practice more this skill, because I see it like this. If an athlete, for example, tries to run perfectly, but doesn't have the time constraint in mind, so he or she trains their muscles to run without any injury, right? And they can take their time. The race can take an hour. But then the work is that you have a marathon and you need to be number one. That's the work. You need to be the fastest, the best way you could run. The way we learn is the best way we can run. That's how we learn. We learn what is the best way to make an effect, but with no art direction in mind, with no time constraint in mind. This is never shown in tutorials and in courses. And I feel like we need that one course, that one workshop where it's very clear what is needed from you, right? It's like team-oriented course, and it has to be dynamic. So, for example, if you ever made a course, let's just imagine it's your course, and you say, okay, you have this content to learn from, but you have homework. You have to, and you group people together. You group 2 people together, 3 people together, 5 people together, and you tell them, all right, by the end of the month, we need this list of effects, because that's more production practicing, right? That's more like we are packing our stuff, going on a boot camp. That's more like a boot camp. And they have to deliver, you know, and even if they don't deliver all of it, they at least delivered some of it. And there's like a criteria of how much they could deliver. And say, for example, by the end of that, they get to sell those assets they created, and they get to earn from it. Something like that. Like
Incentivation,
yeah. I would love a course like that. I would love to attend a course like that. I don't feel like
That's
it's...
closer.
Yeah.
That's closer to reality than... Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's much closer to reality,
Yeah.
Because that's what happens when we get a job in the industry. That's exactly what happens.
That's exactly what happens.
Effects.
Yeah. You have
It's
an art
true,
direction. Like, so for example, say you organize a bootcamp by the end of the year. Every year, let's say you say each one has different art style. The people who join that bootcamp already like can have a vision of what is expected from them.
Imagine if the art style is assigned randomly now to each one.
Exactly. For each team, different art style.
For each team, exactly.
And different type of effects. So like the 5 people can do all the trail variants, right, of the bullets, for example, of the different bullets, and the other team has to make AOEs. The third team has to make all the sparks and the fire.
Look good.
Yes. Man, I would love a course like that. I don't know if you're ever gonna do it, but hey, I could help out.
That's a great idea, but I think that sometimes that's only life that can prepare you to that.
Yeah. Sometimes, you're right. But like the art style thing, if you're not an artist and you've experienced with different art styles, if you're only coming from a technical standpoint, it's hard, man. Because you learned in one way.
Hard.
Like, let's say you're always trained on like League of Legends type of style.
Yeah.
When the art director tells you there should be no gradient, there should be no transparency, then you just literally, you're like, what
am I supposed to do?
What's alpha clipping? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or when the art director tells you, can this be more 3D? And you just have to You know, like you have to be so flexible.
You have to be extremely flexible and you have to be open-minded about the job you are going to get, because sometimes it's not the art style you're comfortable with.
Yeah.
It's
Any advice
yeah.
for newcomers?
My advice is to always experiment as much as you can. Don't be afraid to break stuff. Don't be afraid to break. That's what I did to learn on my own. I broke a lot of stuff and I spent a lot of time, for example, learning shaders, which is something that didn't come easily to me.
Yeah.
So I watched everything about shaders, and I found a shader online, and I would open it up and I would break it apart just to see how it works. Yeah, that's
When I found something that I was missing out on when it comes to learning is purchasing Unity asset stores or the engine that I want to play with and just backward engineer the stuff.
the just what? Sorry, I
Backward
didn't
engineer?
pick it up.
You know what it means?
I think I know. But
So
if you could,
so like
explain it to
imagine
me.
a person who never understood how a car works, like, or how it works, and they start taking the engine apart and try to understand, because like
yeah,
they
yeah,
never learned like the
Mhm.
theory behind it. So backward engineering. It's
Backward. Oh, yeah, I
backward
got
engineering.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, got it. Yeah. Oh, sometimes that's what I did. I had to backwards engineer shaders and stuff like that just to see how they would work. Yes, exactly. Backwards engineered stuff. It's the best way to learn.
All right,
Yep.
Gabriel, thank you so much for your time. Any last thing you want to mention? You want to promote?
I want to say thank you, Jack, for calling me out to this podcast. It was awesome. An hour flew by. I didn't even notice.
Me too.
And I hope that people can still. I hope that I can keep on helping people.
You are.
Yeah. And I'm glad that I could help you find this area, this small section of game development, and that you are enjoying it. That's the most important part. Finding someone that enjoys and something that didn't know exists, that didn't even know that it existed. And I'm not going to promote anything because, it's all right. I can just probably say, check out Rabbit's Tale. I think it's going to be awesome.
Rabbit's Tale. When is it coming out?
Tale. That's a tough question.
Next week?
Next week, yeah, sure. We are aiming by the end of this year. We will see, but we will have a demo probably live this year on Steam in one of the Steam Next
Awesome.
Fests. That's our focus right now. Yeah.
That sounds cool. Yeah.
I would really like to see what you are doing. Yeah. By the way.
Oh, I would love to share more information once I can.
Yeah,
and
sure.
I'll definitely send you the link for the trailer. I'll also share it with the people I know, or with on the server that we have, the Generalists.
All right.
Yeah, man. Thank you a lot for your time. I wish time can fly by faster so I could try Rabbit's Tale and see your future videos, but everything has to wait and everything needs to take its time.
Everything takes time.
Yeah.
That's
all right, Gabriel. Have a good one.
Okay. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you. Bye.
See you.